had to talk to Peck. He didn't want to do it.
Gregory Peck said, I don't want to play that scene, and I don't think I should be killing a 5-year-old child. Finally, Harvey Bernhard saved the situation. He said, I'll tell you what. He says, we'll film it both ways, one where you do and one where you don't, and then we'll just use whichever is the best. And he got him to go ahead with that, and of course, the one that had the greatest dramatic impact was the one that you see in the movie.
It's the most powerful scene in the whole movie. Would you be prepared to kill someone you loved, even though you knew that inside them there was a demonic force?
Please, Daddy, no! No, Daddy, no!
God, help me.
With two different endings, the filmmakers had a difficult choice to make. Should they show good triumphing over evil? The first cut of the film had a very different ending from the one that would eventually be released.
Harvey and I showed him the film. The last scene, you pull back and it's 2 adult caskets and a child's casket, and you realize that Peck is dead, Lee Remick is dead, and the child is dead, that he had been successful in knifing the child and that the bullet had killed him.
Damien was dead and the world was saved. But the Antichrist was to be resurrected before the film was released.
That deserves to be put in the hands of Alan Ladd, Jr. at 20th Century Fox, because as we were getting out from dinner, he said, you know, is there any way you can keep the kid alive? I said, oh my God, can I, but we have to reshoot. He said, take the money you need, reshoot it. I shot it. I actually was on the camera. You pull back and drop down, and there's little Damien. You realize he's not dead. And the audience went, oh, wow. He turned and looked at camera, and I said, don't you laugh, Damien. Don't you dare start laughing now. And I cut it and printed, showed it to Laddie, and he said, that's it. And it's this great. So at the end, for me, it's like he's saying, did this movie even exist? Do you believe for a second I'm the son of the devil?
Filming was completed in January 1976. With the irreplaceable film in the hold, the production team headed back to Hollywood. And somehow they just knew that this last journey would be targeted.
We were taking the negative back to the States. I had a bad feeling about it. Dick had a bad feeling about it. My wife had a bad feeling about it. I just wanted to get home. Alarm went off, and they said, we have to make an emergency landing in Newfoundland. I said, oh, we're not going to make it.
Eventually, they made it back to LA. But then they had to fight to get the film taken seriously.
We had a terrible time with the people who were marketing the film. They kept saying, oh, relax, it's a horror film, it's only a film.
It was, you know, it's just another picture.
And Harvey and I literally had a fist fight.
I wanted to build him. I was going to hit him.
Harvey put a guy against a wall, I put a guy against a desk who had a marketing.
He was giving us the brush off.
And Harvey went berserk. He jumped the desk, grabbed this guy, and he said, to you it's a film, to me it's my life.
Don't bullshit me with, it's just another picture.
We really believed in this. And Alan Ladd let us go to the man who was the CEO, the head of Fox. And he said, bring in your own people. If you really believe in this, and we did.
Their persistence paid off, and Fox put up a staggering $15 million to market the $2 million film. It was due to be released on the 3rd of June, but the head of the studio spotted an opportunity they could only have dreamed of.
Alan Ladd looked at the program and he said, you know, guys, if you wait 3 more days, you'll come out on June 6th. This big preview night. He said, 6th month, 6th day, 1976, 666. Oh my God. It got incredible publicity.
You tend to think of like marketing and hype as being quite recent inventions, but The Omen is one of the first movies where I remember the advertising impinging on your life. To this day, it stands, I think, as a brilliant campaign.
As the build-up continued, the crew of The Omen moved on to new projects, and where they went, misfortune seemed to follow.
All right, shooting this time, man. Things seem to have happened to people after the movie was made and shown around the world. Serious things happened to people.
The accidents associated with the Omen were far from over. If anything, they seemed to get more severe.
Alf Joint was on the film. He arranged all the stunts and worked out how things were going to be done.
When Lee Remick...
Taking Blair's empty rhetoric and chuckling crime, chuckling the causes of crime, and taking that in reverse, looking at the causes of crime, what would you do to eliminate those things which are highlighted by the people who are experts on this? Poverty, lack of education, drugs, drink, single-parent families, etc., etc. There's a very long list of possible causes. What's your social policies to reduce those?
Well, for a start, I would say that while those things all have an impact, it's the more that is known about, the more studies in terms of DNA and genetics are concerned and so on, when you get genetic dispositions to all sorts of behaviour and illness and all the rest of it, then crime is the same. And there's no doubt that to some extent, with some people, there is a genetic disposition towards a form of extreme selfishness, which the rest of us find offences as crime.
That's obviously true of the extreme examples, the Yorkshire Ripper or other mass murders, where they're not made by society, they're just genetically deformed, they're mentally adult. But do you think that's true equally of the shoplifter or the burglar or the whatever it may be, the pathetic criminal?
There's a fair, considering it's an extraordinary, critically incorrect area to be in, there is a fair degree of research, scientific research, especially studies of twins who've been separated, young or at birth or whatever, which bears out that a great deal of what we achieve for good or ill is genetically determined. Obviously, it is affected by environment as well. It's not a question of nature or nurture, there's a balance. But nature is far more important than it's given credit for. And until you at least accept that, then again you're fighting crime with a purely Marxist weapon, which is the idea that everything is determined by our economic surroundings.
Let's take the proposition that there is a criminal gene which is passed on through the generations. How do you put into operation a policy to prevent that gene being passed on, to sterilise people? Well,
I don't know. That is not something which any politician or group of politicians can do or dictate. Instead, they have to say, look, this is the reality, and stop hiding behind the politically correct fictions. This is the reality, people. What are we going to do about it? And have a debate, and then that's something which is a national referendum. It's not for us.
The science of eugenics
was out of the hospital window onto the roof of the ambulance. The stuntman Alf Joint jumped from a cherry picker over the top, landing on the roof. And Lee Remick, who was already sitting inside the ambulance, fell back so that you saw her face. The strange thing that happened was a year later on a movie called Bridge Too Far in Holland.
Our very first day's filming, Alf gets shot standing on the rooftop, and he has to fall off the rooftop into the airbags. And he had the airbags on the ground, must have been about 40 feet down.
Right in the middle of the take, when we were doing it, he sort of fell off rather strangely and awkwardly. Missed the airbag and injured himself quite badly and ended up in hospital.
He knew exactly where to fall and everything else, but somehow he just landed in between the airbags.
He said he felt as though he was pushed. But there was nobody near him at the time. He was completely up there on his own.
Couldn't understand it. Well-known stuntman, been in the business many years, and the airbags were quite big, but for some extraordinary reason he fell in between them. Nobody can explain why.
The slightly weird thing to us who had been on the Omen was that Alf was lying in hospital in exactly the same way that he was when he was doubling Lee Remick. So he had the same arm in a cast and the same tubes up his nose and everything. And there was a very sort of spooky similarity.
On the 6th of June, 1976, The Omen opened. The sense of evil terrified audiences, and cinemas were packed on its first weekend.
The picture opened with a bang. I mean, just so big that we couldn't believe it.
I used to love to go to screenings and sit in the front row and look back at the audience, and it gave me such glee to see these people screaming, hiding their eyes, and it was mind-blowing.
The audience reaction was stunning. When Lee Remick falls out of the window, the woman next to me stood up and says, "She's dead now."
It was just like having an orgasm, because we made a picture that affected human beings.
I remember going to an Odeon cinema and it being packed to the doors to watch The Omen. And it had such a hype about it. From the moment it started to roll to the very end, everybody was captivated. With every death, there was a scream.
The Omen was a sensation, and talk of a curse was forgotten. But inevitably, word of The Omen's troubled production seeped out. Rumours and theories about the film linked the on-screen deaths with the numerous incidents which plagued the production. The violent suicide scene echoed the tragic death of Gregory Peck's son. The attacks on Damien in the safari park fatally mirrored when an animal handler was killed. And even after filming had been completed, the stuntman who doubled for Lee Remick seriously injured himself in a bizarre accident. But the most shocking death in the film was an elaborate stunt that to this day is one of the most horrific scenes in cinema history.
I came up with the idea one day of having the sheet of glass on the back of a truck and the truck running backwards down the hill. Ended up with a pretty good decapitation, I thought.
Audiences gasped at the disturbing death, and like so many incidents in the film, it would return to haunt the man who created it. And though John Richardson couldn't have known it at the time, this death too would be reenacted in real life. The most frightening and inexplicable Omen-related death was about to unfold.
7 on 4.